Hello, good day. In this tutorial video, you will learn about the rules of inference. Our learning outcomes would be at the end of this video, you must be able to determine the different rules of inference and prove statements using rules of inference. In our last discussion, you have proven logical argument using truth table. Pero marami kasing oras ang uubusin kapag truth tables ang gagawin natin. Now, in this tutorial video or in this lesson, the rules of inference is the best way or the best method in order to shorten yung mga process natin in validating a logical argument. Lalo na kapag ka 3 or more simple statements ang meron doon sa argument natin. Now, these are the different rules of inference. The first rule is what we call Modus Ponens or yung MP. MP ang gagamitin natin in this session. Now, in this rule class, meron tayong dalawang premises. Yung isang premise is a conditional statement, tapos yung isang premise ay yung antecedent ng conditional, which is P. Pag meron tayong ganitong dalawang premises, at ito yung form niya, then we can conclude that it is Q. Now, in the modus tollens naman, the same, meron pa rin tayong conditional statement, pero negation naman ngayon ng consequence yung second. Pag negation ng dalawang, yung consequence dito, tapos yung second premise natin is a negation of the consequence, then we can conclude that it is not P. Okay? Not P. Remember that. That is modus tollens. Now, dito naman sa hypothetical syllogism, meron tayong dalawang premises wherein they are both conditional statements. Pero titignan ninyo that the consequence of the first premise or the first conditional statement becomes the antecedent of the second premise. Okay? Pag meron tayong ganyang form, then we can infer that it is P implies R. So, ito na yung magiging conclusion natin. So, that's the hypothetical syllogism. The fourth rule is what we call the disjunctive syllogism. So, as you notice here, we have two forms. Okay? From the word disjunctive, it is understood that it is a disjunction. If we have two premises such that one premise is a disjunction of two statements, and then the second premise is a negation of a statement, therefore we can infer or we can arrive at a conclusion that it must be Q. Same also in the second form. Again, we have disjunction of two statements, and then the second premise is not Q. If it is not Q, therefore it is P. Now, the fifth rule is the constructive dilemma. Now, as you notice here, we have again two premises. And the first premise is the conjunction of two conditional statements. And the second premise is the disjunction of the two antecedents from the first premise. Now, if we have these forms or if we have this form of two premises, then we can infer or we can arrive at a conclusion that it must be Q or S. So, kunin naman natin ngayon yung dalawang consequence. Since yung ginamit dun sa second premise natin is both the antecedents, then we can arrive at a conclusion using the two consequences. That's constructive dilemma. Now, for the sixth rule, destructive dilemma naman, So, in this rule, as you notice, we have again conjunction of two conditional statements. Pero yung second premise natin is a negation of the two consequences. Okay? If we have these two forms in the two premises, then we can infer or we can get a conclusion using the two consequences naman. But in the destructive dilemma, it should not be positive, or dapat kukunin natin yung negation ng dalawang antecedent natin. Okay? But using again disjunction. So as of now, dapat alam na ninyo kung ano yung mga relasyon ng mga different rules. Now for the seventh rule, we have what we call the simplification. So in simplification, we have only one statement. Okay, and that is the conjunction of two statements. Now if we have that form of two statements, P and Q, since both statements are true, then we can arrive at the conclusion that it must either P, okay? So since P is true, or kunin din natin yung isa which is Q. So that is simplification. So pwede nating kunin yung isang statement from the given conjunction. Now, we have also what we call the conjunction. Now, in this rule, in conjunction, we have two statements. If these two statements or two premises rather, if these two premises are true, then we can conjunct the two statements to arrive at the conclusion here. So, we have P and Q since these two premises are true. So that's conjunction. Now in addition, from the word itself, add, is we can join any statements from a premise, okay? Any statement as long as we use disjunction. Okay? So, pwede yan, magiging tautology pa rin as long as we add any statements using disjunction. P, for instance, we have premise P, then our conclusion, we can just add any statement using or disjunction. Now, the last rule is what we call the absorption. In the absorption, we only have one premise, which is in conditional statement. Now, in absorption, in this rule, we can actually add or conjoin same statement from the two statements, the antecedent and our consequence. For instance, here, our conclusion here is we just conjunct a statement R, okay, from the two, from the antecedent P and R, and also dun sa Q and R. Okay? Or it can also be using a statement or using the two statements, for instance using a conjunction P or using the statement P. So pwede pa rin yun, we have P and P implies Q and P. Okay? So since P and P, okay, since P and P is always true, then we can simplify that further into P. That becomes P implies P and Q. So pinagpalit lang natin yan because a conjunction is true if we interchange the position of the two. So that's commutative. So again, these are the rules of inference. So you must master each rule in order for you to prove, okay, in order for you to prove logical statements or valid arguments. Let's have exercises on the rule of inference. So first, identify the rule of inference used in each argument. First argument is this one. Now, ang kailangan nyo lang tignan is the relationship of each premise to arrive at the given conclusion. So, as you notice here, yung not A and B and D are the antecedents of the two conditional statements. So, ang naiisip natin dyan, pagka meron tayong conjunction ng dalawang conditional statements, ay yung constructive dilemma. Okay? So, naka-arrive tayo ng conclusion na not C or not E because the two premises, okay, the two premises are in the form of constructive dilemma. Next, we have P implies R or Q and Q or not R. So this is the conclusion. Now, what can you see or what is the relationship of the two premises to the conclusion? As you notice, so meron tayo, ito yung first premise natin and this one is the second premise. Pero we arrive at a conclusion na pinagsama natin yung dalawa using a conjunction symbol. So pagka meron tayong ganyan, of course, naisip natin yung conjunction wherein we always or we can always conjunct two premises. So ang sagot natin dito is conjunction. Number 3. So if we have, again, the first premise is a conditional statement because of this symbol, and the second premise is biconditional statement. Okay, so yan is a modus ponens. Why? Because this premise, the second premise, is the antecedent of the first premise. So pag meron tayong ganyan, we can always arrive at conclusion using the consequence. Okay? So, gaya nito, P implies Q. If we have P, pag same yung second premise doon sa antecedent, then we can get Q. Okay? The same also here. Number 4. So, again, we have conjunction, conditional statement, combination of biconditional and disjunction. So, take a look at our conclusion. Now, the conclusion is exactly the same with the second statement here. Pero, nasaan yung first statement dito? Nawala kasi ang ginamit lang na rule is the simplification. Okay? Whenever we have simplification rule, we can get the P or the Q. Okay? So, yun po yung simplification. Ito, kinuha natin tong statement na to. At yun yung conclusion natin. Pwede rin naman na kunin lang natin itong R implies D, yun yung magiging conclusion. Okay? As long as conjunction yung ginamit. Okay? Number 5, lastly, how that we have two conditional statements na first premise is a condition, second premise is also a condition. Now take a look at the two premises. So yung antecedent or the consequence of the first premise is also the antecedent of the second premise. And then yung conclusion niya, kinuha niya yung antecedent ng first and then kinuha niya yung consequence ng second. As you notice here, so therefore, we have conditional statement. And what rule is that? Then we have hypothetical syllogism. Okay? So, ayan. So, parehas sila. So, we can get the two remaining statements using conditional statement. Now, how about number 6? Now, as you notice here, this is just the negation of one statement in the first premise. Notice here, ito, yung P if and only if Q natin is a negation of this. Siyempre, pagka ito ay hindi na pwede, we can always arrive at the conclusion na X implies R. At anong rule natin yon doon? The rule is the disjunctive syllogism. Kapag hindi na pwede yung isa, kasi nga false na siya, then kunin natin yung other statement. Yun yung magiging conclusion. Next, how about this one? So, kung makikita ninyo, ito naman, ang ginamit natin is the consequence. The consequence of the first, ito yun, and also the consequence of the second, R and T. Tapos, ninegate natin yon itong dalawa. And then at the same time, syempre pagka hindi na ito, of course, we can also have na hindi na rin pwede yung X. So that's why negative or not X. And this one is also not R and T. Pagka hindi na pwede ito, of course, hindi na rin pwede yung P. So we have not P. So pagka if we're going to combine the two, not X or not P. Okay? And what rule is that? Is the destructive dilemma. Number 8. How about if we have only this? One premise and it is a conditional statement. At tapos yung conclusion natin, we come up with additional statement. Okay, again, we can always add any statement as long as we use disjunction. At anong tawag natin doon? That is addition. Okay? You can add any statement as long as you'll use disjunction symbol. Number 9. What can you notice here? So again, parang yung ano natin kanina dito sa number 7. As you notice here, this is the consequence of this conditional statement. Kapag hindi na pwede ito, okay? And then, we have also not the, pagka hindi na pwede ito, of course, di na rin pwede yan. So, ito yung i-negate natin doon sa conclusion. As you notice here, na-negate na yung antecedent natin. Because hindi na nga pwede do yung consequence. Okay? So, anong tawag natin dyan? We have the modus tollens. Okay? Now, let's have this type of exercise. Form the logical symbols for each argument using the letters being underlined and highlighted. Then identify further the rule of inference used to arrive at the conclusion. First, a square is both rectangle and rhombus. Therefore, square is also a rhombus. Now, para masabi natin or to identify whether statement is in a premise or whether a statement is a conclusion, okay, ang kailangan lang natin titignan is the word therefore, hence, thus. Okay, yun yung magiging conclusion natin. Prior to that will be the premises. So in the first statement or the first argument, a square is both rectangle and rhombus is a premise. So we only have one premise kasi nga isang statement lang yan. But take note, we have the word and. Okay? At yung end natin is a conjunction. So therefore, we have A and O. Okay? So this is the symbol for a square is both rectangle and rhombus. Now, therefore is already our conclusion. And what symbol will be used in our conclusion? So, a square is also a rhombus. Since rhombus, then we're going to use O. So, therefore, the conclusion is O. Now, based on this argument, ano yung rule of inference ang ginamit? Now, take note that if this is a conjunction, then we can always take one or any statement dito sa dalawang argument na to, sa argument na to. So we take O. So therefore, we have simplification. Pwede nyong kunin yung A rin. Okay? Pero in this argument, ang kinuha is the rhombus. Okay? Number 2, an odd integer is divisible by 3. Thus is already a conclusion, an integer that is not even. Take note, ang not even is already an odd. Okay? So therefore, not even is an odd, is divisible by 3, or an integer that is even is divisible by 5. So yung first premise natin, an odd integer is divisible by 3, that's only O. Okay? Wala na siyang or, wala na rin siyang if then dyan, at wala naman siyang O. Just a single or simple statement which is O. Yung thus natin, again, sabi mo kanina, that's already conclusion. Pero titignan natin. An integer that is not even or odd na ito is divisible by 3. So ito na yung magiging odd natin. Okay? Ito yung magiging O. O na yan. Since meron tayong or, we're going to use the symbol for disjunction. Ang kabaliktaran nito. An integer that is even. So we're going to use letters O because this one is not even is already an odd. At yung even natin is E. So since or yung ginamit, the symbol must be O or E. Now, this argument is valid again because there's a rule on this. At ano yung rule? Nagdagdag tayo ng E doon sa premise. At possible yon using the rule of addition. Third, if you are attentive during lecture, then you learn about new lesson. You did not learn the new lesson. Therefore, you were not attentive during lecture. Now, in this argument, you notice that we have two statements before the conclusion. Therefore, we can have two premises on this argument. So, the first premise, if, okay, pag meron siyang if, that's already conditional statement. The consequence would be, if you are attentive during lecture, okay, that is A. Yung then natin is an implication, you learn about new lesson. So our first premise would be A implies N, okay, because of if then. Now, the second statement, which is the second premise, you did not learn the new lesson. Take note that you learn new lesson is already our N. Since meron siyang negation, which is not, then the second premise would be not end. Next is the conclusion, because of the term therefore, you were not attentive. So you were not attentive is just a negation of the first, the antecedent here, yung A natin. So we're not attentive, so that's not A. So therefore, it's not A. So again, this one is valid because there is a rule. At ano yung rule natin dito? Remember, if hindi na pwede yung N dito, again, this is a conditional statement, right? If hindi na pwede yung N dito, of course, hindi na rin pwede yung A. So the conclusion would be not A. At anong rule yun? That's the modus tollens. Let's have the last example. If you are a mathematics major, then you have Math 212 and Math 213. Remember, the first statement or the first premise is a conditional statement. And take note also that we have the conjunction of A and T here because of the word and. Okay? Next, the second premise, if you have Math 212 and Math 213, sorry for the omitted 3, then you have Math class. The second premise is again a conditional statement because of the word if and then. Okay? Thus is conclusion. If you are a mathematics major, then you have math class. Thus the conclusion is also a conditional statement. So let's symbolize each statement. If you are a math major, M, then, okay, yung then natin is an implication, A and T. So the symbol for this is the antecedent is only M, and the consequence is the conjunction of A and T. So this one is a symbol for the first premise. The second premise, if you have Math 212 and Math 213, this is already the symbol for that. Yung then natin na implication, you have math class. So if we have A and T implies H. Okay? Thus, is a conclusion, if you are mathematics major, so ito na yun, yung ginamit natin doon is M, then you have math class. Math class is H. And also a conditional statement, then we have the conclusion, M implies H. Now again, paano natin masasabi that this is a valid argument or a logical argument? Because there's a rule that we can apply on this. At ano yung rule na yon? Notice that the consequence here becomes the antecedent of the second premise. So pagka magkaparehas yan, then we can always conclude that M implies H. Ito, kukunin natin yan. Okay, anong rule yon? We have the hypothetical syllogism. So let's proceed now to a higher level of exercise, and this is to give justification on each step below. So we are already given the argument. It is already symbolized using these letters, and we have also given the steps here. So we're just going to identify kung ano yung mga steps or rules ang ginamit in each step. So let's proceed to number 5. So the conclusion is C. Okay? And how do we get C? Based on the given premises, ang number 1 lang ang pwede nating gamitin because this is a conjunction. Pag meron tayong conjunction, remember class, na pwede nating kunin yung isa sa kanila as our conclusion. Okay? As another premise rather. Now, using our 1, okay, premise number 1, we get C. Okay, so yun yung pupunta natin doon sa number 5. At ano yung number na premise na ginamit? That's 1. At ano yung rule? Ilalagay natin doon. That's simplification. Next, we have another premise here which is A implies B. At paano tayo nakakuha ng ganito? So again, we can now use number 5 as our premise again, and the given 4 premises. Now take a look. A implies B is nandito, right? A implies B, number 2 and number 4. Nandito yung A implies B. But ang possible lang dyan to come up with A implies B is number 2 and number 5. At ano yung naiisip ninyo? Remember that this is a conditional statement, right? And then meron tayong another premise dito na C. So since parehas yung antecedent, tapos yung second premise natin na C, pwede nating kunin yung consequence na A implies B. So yun yung magiging step natin dito. So using number 2 and number 5, we come up A implies B, and that is modus ponens. Next, paano naman tayo nakapag-arrive ng not D or B? Now, take a look. Ang not D or B, andito yon sa number 4. Premise number 4. At paano natin nakuha yon? Now, take a look. The antecedent here is A implies B. At meron na tayong premise na given kanina, which is the premise 6. Now, we can use again 4 and 6 to get not D or B using modus ponens. Okay? Next. Now, the last step is already our conclusion. na based on the 7 premises here, ano kaya yung rules na pwedeng i-apply from these 7 premises to come up in our conclusion. Now, the conclusion is not A and E. Take a look at this. In number 3, meron tayong A and E. Kaya lang, wala siyang not dito. Paano ba tayo nagkakaroon ng not doon sa antecedent? If naka-not din yung consequence. Meron ba tayong premise na ganon? Of course, meron tayo. We have the number 7 na premise. So since not yung consequence natin rather, then inanat din natin yung consequence. So using 3 and 7, we come up with the conclusion not A and E because of modus tollens. Okay, so ganyan po yung gagawin ninyo on the next slide. Now suppose we have an argument again. Suppose we have 1 to 4 premises and the conclusion is J and M. Now, gagawin nyo lang naman dyan is to come up with another conclusion using rules of inference. Okay, for example, nasa number 5 natin is J. Paano nga ba nakapag-arrive ng J? Now, tignan natin dito. Gawin nyo lahat ng possible combination. Now, using statement or using premise 1, which is I, tapos yung premise 2 natin, I implies J. Ito na yon. Okay, right? So, since parehas yung premise na to the antecedent of this conditional statement, then, pwede natin kunin yung J. Right? So, yun na yun, number 5. So, using 1 and 2, okay, we got J because of modus tollens. So, dapat master nyo na yung mga rules of inference. Yeah, tuloy natin. And then, number 6 natin, we concluded that K implies M. So, nasaan na naman kinuha yung K implies M? So, yung may K implies M lang is nandun sa number 4. Pero meron siyang antecedent na J. Paano kukunin yung K implies M? Okay? Take note, we can get K implies M as long as we have a premise J. Meron ba tayong premise J? Of course, number 5. Okay? So, since parehas sila, then we can get K implies M. So, yung number 6. So, using 4 and 5, okay, we have modus tollens. Modus ponens, rather. Number 7, ano sa tingin ninyo? Now, again, we have J implies K here. Sa number 7. Paano natin kunin to? Meron siyang I na antecedent. Meron ba tayong premise na I? Meron. Yung number 1. Okay? So, using 1 and 3, we can get J implies K using, again, modus ponens. Next, J implies M. So, wala nang J implies M dito, right? Pero, using 6 and 7, take note of this, yung antecedent ng conditional statement na to is the consequence ng conditional statement na number 7. So, since parehas sila na K, then we can come up with J implies M. Okay? So, that's 7 and 6. Ano yung rule natin dyan? We have hypothetical syllogism. Sir, bakit hindi pwedeng M implies J? Baka tatanungin ninyo. Hindi pwedeng maging antecedent yung M kasi nga nasa consequence siya. Ang antecedent dapat natin is J. So, that's why yung antecedent dito is J. Next, paano naman ngayon nakapag-arrive ng M? Okay? So, pwede rin naman yung K implies M, right? Pero wala tayong K na premise dito. How about J implies M? Meron ba tayong premise na J? Of course, meron tayong premise na J dito. Then, we can use 5 and 8 using modus ponens to get M. Okay, ilalagay natin dito. And then, we can now have our conclusion J and M. Okay, ano kaya yung gagamitin nating premises? Okay, using J dun sa number 5 and number N na M. Okay, we can always join the two using what? Using conjunction. Magsasamahin lang natin yung dalawa. Okay? So that is how are you going to prove a given argument. Next, letter C. Again, same process lang doon sa dalawang naunang example natin. So take a look further doon sa mga relationship ng mga premises and arrive at a conclusion na applicable yung isang rule of inference. Now, take a look at our fourth premise dito. So, this premise is the same to this statement here in the second premise. Hinakuha natin itong fourth because of premise number 2 and using simplification. Why? Kasi, pag meron tayong simplification, you can take one statement as your conclusion. So, ito yung ginamit natin. Next, we arrive at A or B. Saan ba yung A and B natin? So, ito yung A and B. So, again, same reason, number 2, and simplification. Again, pinaghiwalay lang natin because of the conjunction. And then, we have number 6, C or D. Saan ba nga ba nakuha yung C or D? So, take a look at our premises 1 to 5. Saan dyan ang merong C and D? So, meron tayong 1. We have also CD here, number 2. And number 4, CD. Now, ang pwede lang na i-applyan ng rule dito, so you notice, in premise number 1, tapos premise number 5, the same yung antecedent dito. A and B, tapos yung premise na ito. And since this one is a conditional statement, then we can get C or D. So that's why we have premise number 6 here. And the reason is because we get 1 and 5 using modus ponens. Ayan, magkaparehas sila. So therefore, kukunin natin yun. That's number 6. And paano naman nakuha yung B or E? Yung B or E natin, andito sa number 2, right? B or E. Pero, na simplify na natin to kanina, we came up to number 4. Meron lang tayo dito is B, E. Now, how to arrive at B? Paano kukunin to? As long as we have C or D. Meron ba tayong C or D? Meron. This is premise number 6. So, since meron tayong CD, then we can also get BE. So, yun yung magiging conclusion natin. So, using 4 and 6, we can arrive at the conclusion B or E using constructive dilemma. Okay? So, dalawang antecedent, yun yung CD, kunin yung dalawang consequence. Yun yung B or E. Next, how to come up with B. Now, take a look at this. B or E, makukuha natin yung B pag meron tayong not E. Meron ba tayong not E? Yes, yun yung premise number 3. Pag hindi na siya E, because of the not E, then we get B. So that is why we have a conclusion B. Now, using 7 and 3, we come up with B using disjunctive syllogism. So thank you for listening. That ends our session for today. Reminder lang, para ma-master ninyo yung mga rules of inferences, para ma-master ninyo on how to prove an argument if it is valid or not, kailangan din yung i-master, okay, yung concept at yung form ng bawat rule of inference. Thank you again. Good luck and God bless.